YOLO Composing Gloves here, and this is the first video in the Mastering Synth1 series. So this is aimed at the very beginner, and we're going to go into much more complicated topics later. So later on, if you're more advanced, this series may be of interest to you. What is unique about this series is, yes, we will be learning Synth1, and I choose Synth1 because it's free. It's that simple. Beginners normally don't have a whole lot, and so we're going to be running with Synth1. But what's really cool about this is I will give you exercises. There will be tests. There will be a way to gauge yourself on how much you actually understand and how to actually apply what I'm telling you, because that's like half the battle. So what is going to come with this as well is a written portion. So here I've got now I'm working on this. I'll be working on this for quite a while, but I have got I'm basically writing a small book to go with it. Every lesson will have a chapter along with a series of exercises, unless it's not something that really makes that much sense. So today, this is the intro, and I've already told you who I am. I'm composing gloves and what this is sort of aimed at. But the exercises, as I want to emphasize here, are very necessary. Don't skip the exercises. Those are going to be the thing that allow you to become really good. Exercises may be something from try and make a variation on this sort of a sound. Use this principle to create a sound that accomplishes this oral effect. Fill in this track with a synth 1 lead or something. You know, there will be additional sort of skills taught alongside or sort of expected just a little bit. So nothing too crazy. They should all be perfectly doable. If you pass everything, you will have a degree of ability here. You'll be able to really actually use Synth1 and know like what you're doing. And this will actually extend out to other synths. When you grab other synths, you'll actually be like, oh, I know I have a direction on where I want to go here, and I know what things I have to touch in order to get these other things to sound the way I want them to. It's not just like a slew of knobs you're looking at anymore. And so, because, you know, sound design is great, but unless you see how it applies in a song, it's not really that useful to you. So my goal here is to achieve a level of mastery. It's actually not total mastery, because to me, mastery is uncompromising as an ideal. You've mastered it. And mastery, you may master certain aspects of it, but to master the thing as a whole, you have to be beyond it. So, like, for example, for Synth1, you've got to be able to frickin' build Synth1. And I mean, like, and work within every conceivable circumstance. Like, you are the master of this thing. And so that's a very, very, very high bar. And it's an ideal, right? So some of you guys may fundamentally disagree with what mastery means, but I'm talking about true, complete, uncompromising mastery. We're going for a level of mastery. That's not to say that someone who you could still consider yourself a master of a particular topic if you're like amazing, better than anyone else at it. Obviously, currently, you're the world's best master of this topic, but it doesn't mean you're like the ultimate, like the ideal master. That's what I'm talking about. So anyways, a little bit of philosophy aside, we're going to be aiming for a degree of this. We want to have a pretty comprehensive understanding of what's going on here. Something that I have not been able to really accomplish in other series, and I've restructured things a little bit to really make this something that will genuinely teach you. So why Synth1? It's free, and beginners usually don't have too much. So we got to go with the free stuff, right? And it's also a really fundamental synthesizer to work with. It's one page. There's a lot of limiting factors about it. And so when we consider things, there's specific ways we're going to want to think about things. And so I just really like how straightforward this is. So that's another reason why. Tools I expect you to have. A DAW with some effects. I'm going to be using FL. You can use whatever you want. You might be in Ableton, Logic. I don't care. But you just need a DAW. It's see, that's it. Not a very high bar. If I do grab something that you don't have, maybe I grab like Trash 2 by Isotope or something, I'm going to explain why or offer up reasons why I would grab this. And you could accomplish very similar things usually with stock effects, but I might grab it for a particular reason. And that's because I just don't want to, I want to show you why, you know, this will sort of help you decide on what you want to get next too on your VST plugin list, perhaps. So I want to do it the things like they would normally be done. I don't want to like cut corners or do anything that would sort of cheat the experience out of you. So But I will offer up, I'll explain things. So don't worry about that. And this should not be an issue, especially at the beginning. This will not come up. So we have things I expect you to know. I expect you to know your way around your DAW. I don't want to be answering questions like, how do I put MIDI down? Or, other really simple questions. I have a series for FL for exactly that. And so I've linked that here. And I'll also link these things in the description. I'll probably even add a page to my website that will have these things chronicled. And I may even upload them as like a blog or something. I don't know. And then we have basics. And what I mean by basics is all the things I cover in my Sound and Synth Basics course. And so we will be revisiting a lot of these topics. I will be covering things again, sort of from a different perspective. But the more you know, the way better. And I'm going to be talking about things as if you have watched the Sound and Synth Basics course. I'm not going to be sugarcoating the things too much. Maybe in some cases, because maybe there's a specific way I want you to understand it. But if I throw out like terms like phase, I'm not going to bat an eye about like, oh, do you know what phase is? That should be pretty straightforward. In this case, I'm actually later on, we are going to look at phase again, maybe from a bit of a different perspective, but things of that nature, in the given context, if I've covered it in Sound Synth Basics, you're responsible for knowing that. So my methodology, right? So this is the intro video. Let me just sort of lay down something here. I've taught this. I've tutored on this before. I've had private lessons with this. I've gone to school for this, and I'm now taking I'm getting up there in the math, so I'm beginning to understand some of the crazier aspects of this. And I've found that whenever you're learning this topic or whenever I'm teaching this topic, explaining what the component does is not enough at all. So you say right here, it's clear to me this is not the answer alone. While understanding exactly what a component does and how it's made might be important, usually doesn't draw enough bridges in people's minds to make it into their creations effectively. So I have also seen, I've also seen a lot of tutorials that don't explain enough or give enough meaningful practice. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to have a chapter based on a sound design concept rooted in theory, meaning like an idea of some kind. We're getting some conceptual understanding. Each video will explain an aspect of sound design with particular principles in mind. So there might be like a huge number of principles that go along with a particular thing. Like a sine wave is actually an enormous thing to cover, an enormous topic in sound design, because you're able to augment sounds with them. They're one of the fundamental building blocks, and they have so many secondary implications. So, I'm not going to try and tackle the whole thing in one go or even in order, because it might be better to show you it in a different way. So, we're going to just cover a couple principles, and things are going to be progressive. They're going to build, and exercises will build up along the way, and things will stack up. If I just said the same thing like 3 times, but there you go. Repetition is important in learning. I will explain theory, but requires application before we move on to the next topic, unless it doesn't make sense to do that. So some of these first lessons, this is just sort of like, I call it the layer of crap. There's always a layer of just general stuff you got to know before you can move on to really talking about something. And like music theory, you have to know the note names. You just have to know that. And you have to know the interval names. You have to know that. And then you could talk about chords, and there's a point where you just have to know chords. So you got to get past these levels. And sometimes they're perceived as being boring. Maybe I should call it the level of, I don't know, confidence or something. The level where like that, like it's silly to try and do math if you don't have your times tables memorized, which I see people trying to do, and you could tell they could be way, way, way better, and they're 1,000 times slower. If they just memorize times tables, they'd be way faster. So, anyways, I'm going to be explaining the basic levels, and so that's why there might not be exercises after certain things. It's part of that just general level. Lessons will not stay within Synth1. What do I mean by that? Well, we're going to, in some cases, some sound design is a little more advanced. It's going to require some external processing, and that's a very common thing. You're going to see this all over the place, especially if we're working in the context of a track. We're going to be doing a little bit of mixing. So to work with Synth1 alone is going to be sort of a silly, like we don't normally do that. So why would I teach it like that? So we might create a bass sound or a fundamental part of a sound, but then we're going to move out of Synth1 and sort of make it fit in a larger context many times. Or to approach a certain sound that maybe Synth1 does not have a particularly strong capability of doing. So, so we're going to be moving out and doing some additional processing. And this is all just in an effort to achieve what I believe will be a new standard in the way things will be done. Instead of settling for these like tutorials that are missing just like a lot of these aspects, like the practice aspect. A lot of people just sort of publish info and you watch it, and because you watched it but you never did anything with it, you felt like you learned something, when in reality you probably only are going to remember like 10%, if that, of what you just watched. I mean, think of the last couple videos you watched. I mean, how much of that was really something you're going to run around and like you remember most of it and can immediately apply it and know exactly what you're doing, or at least have an idea about what you're doing. I mean, there's going to be a degree of it, but largely I think it goes untouched because we just don't have enough practice. And that's why the classroom is so much more effective, is they have these moments where you stop and you work on it. So anyways, that's my spiel for this. This is just the introduction. These are the expectations. Very clear. I'm pretty excited about this. You'll see me working probably in the document that I'm still working on, but the thing that'll be available to you will not be this document. It will be a version of this document up to the point that we've covered, because like I'm still working on the other stuff. I'm not ready to have you see it yet. So if you're wondering like a difference there. So anyways, that's that. I'm pretty excited about it. I hope you're pretty excited about it. Subscribe for more. Share it with your friends if you feel so inclined. You want to get into sound design, this would be a great starting point. And have a blessed day.